So we're very lucky to have Professor Ben Shneiderman here today to do a special CAIDA seminar. My name is Alan Mackwood, and Ben has become a good friend recently. So he's an Emeritus Distinguished University Professor at the University of Maryland. He's also a visiting scholar, Peter Wall Institute, where he's been engaged in various activities. And we're very lucky to have him here on a semi-annual basis, a recurring semi-annual basis, which is wonderful. He brings so many strengths. I mean, he's a guru of HCI and info information visualization, and he just keeps producing more and more books. It's just wonderful stuff. This is Encounters with HCI Pioneers, and this is the new ABCs of research, a new model for commercialization and getting scientists and researchers and entrepreneurs and companies to work together, which is he's engaged in a project here demonstrating the success of that. Well, I thought I'd just mention something that may disillusion some of you, but in computer science we have a few tribes. The tribes don't always talk to each other. So this is a bit of a shock. I know we thought we were one big homogeneous happy family, but we have different paradigms, different ways of doing things. You know, I could mention the AI tribe and the ML tribe, which doesn't always overlap with the AI tribe, but sometimes it does. The HCI tribe, the software engineering tribe, the theory tribe, and so on. And I was reminiscing with Ben earlier. He visited here in 1996.
Four.
94. He gave a talk on his information visualization work. There's some beautiful work showing how to rank movie preferences.
Film finders, right.
Film
organizing films.
Right.
Finding films.
At one point, he just sort of threw up this side remark that we don't really want AI, we want IA, intelligence augmentation. Right? We don't want to replace them, we want to give them ways of augmenting their reasoning and their decision making. And it seemed to me it wasn't a dichotomy. I remember being slightly irritated by this remark. So, but we've overcome that. So you can think of AI as the thesis, IA is the antithesis, and the synthesis is human-centered artificial intelligence. So the tribes are coming together.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here. And I just thank Alan for being a great host. And as he said, we've become good friends. I see Lauren Whitehead here also, who's part of my invitation, part of the Peter Wall Institute, to work on the HIBAR, Highly Integrated Basic and Responsive Research Alliance. And I see many other growing friends and colleagues here, so I'm very pleased by all that. I'm curious, I mean, how many of you are in computer science? It's like about 40%. And how many of you are in engineering of one kind or another? Another 10%. How many are in, well, what are you in? How many are off campus? We have a few. All right, good. We have the Vancouver Art Gallery here, represented by Bruce Grenville. And let's see, who else? We have off-campus people from from where?
Iogo Health.
What's that?
Iogo Health.
Oh yes, health.
Human factors.
Human factors. The company? No. Oh, the field. What other off-campus groups are represented?
Simon Fraser.
Simon Fraser, there are a few here. Simon Fraser people, I should have asked for show of hands. We have a few. And on campus, what other disciplines are represented?
Chemistry.
Chemistry. Physics. Journalism. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's just interesting to know about the diversity, and I hope that will bring different challenges to this topic, which is what I'm here for, to get a better understanding of where these arguments are working and where they need some help. So, as Alan briefly mentioned, I'm from the University of Maryland and always proud to wave the flag of human-computer interaction that I began a very long time ago, but is now on its 8th director in a happy, successful interdisciplinary community that's mainly computer science and the College of Information Studies, but these other groups, often psychology, sociology, education, journalism, and a very blissfully titled Maryland Institute for Technology and the Humanities, MIT. And I should say also Charles Barrett from journalism and Tara Zeppel, is Tara here? From chemistry are running a workshop that I'll participate in speaking on Wednesday at the Peter Wall Institute about critical visualization for humanities researchers. So there's a growing world there as well. Our website has more than 1,000 technical reports, 200 projects, 200 videos, and so on. You may know me, I hope, from my book, Designing the User Interface, which will play a role in this talk as well, and now in 6th edition, but it tries to document what the field is about and the theories and the practical approaches to it, and it's become one of the main pieces or ways of conveying that world. I'm known for, there's a few easy things to talk about, like web links, our work in 1984-85 to highlight certain phrases in a sentence, and you click on those words in the sentence. That was a bold idea, and it worked out pretty well, and that traveled. We built a software tool called Hypertize, and Tim Berners-Lee saw that, and then took the idea and put it into his manifesto for the web in spring '89. We're also the source of high-precision touchscreens, the small, tiny keyboards on your phone. Were our work in 1988, and the idea of your finger here, you get a cursor above your finger, and then you slide it around, and it activates when you lift off rather than when you land on. And that simple idea allowed for the precision to get a 3-inch keyboard. We had built a 9-inch touchscreen keyboard, a 7-inch, a 5-inch, and a 3-inch, and we ran studies to look at the typing speed. It was harder to type on a small one, but you can do it. And the reviewers of the paper didn't believe it for the journal. And that's why we made this video from which this crude image is drawn to show how you actually could produce that. And again, some small ideas like the link have a very powerful effect. I'm also the holder of the patent on tagging photos, that you can drag and drop a name and it sticks there. And there's many, many patents that follow that and spread very widely. So those are the kind of things that are good for talking about in airport lounges and cocktail parties. But most of my life is spent on deeper things that are really more for expert users, so visualizations. And the one that Alan talked about, Film Finder, was the predecessor for the successful commercial product called Spotfire, which pioneered the ideas of multiple coordinated windows with dynamic query sliders, these double box sliders that you could slide, and within 100 milliseconds, all the screens would update, and even with 1 million or more data items, and now with 1 billion data items. But that kind of rapid, incremental, and reversible operations was the heart of this visualization tools that by now Tableau, which is a Seattle and big part in Vancouver as well, is the dominant force, which with Spotfire was earlier, and we went as commercial from 1997 to 2007, grew to 200 people, and then was bought by TIBCO and remains an active part of TIBCO. But the bigger success story is Tableau, that grew and was purchased last year for $15 billion. So it's pretty satisfying to have seen how these transitions went and have some part and see the blending of the entrepreneurial. The tree map idea here showing the stock market on a good day, the green stocks are going up, the red stocks are going down. One of my former students sent me a tree map from the last week, which was bright red with 1 or 2 green spots. But the area for each stock is the market capitalization, so Apple, Google, Microsoft, and so on are the big ones there. And the color shows the change from yesterday in this version. It could be from last year or whatever, but red ones were falling and green ones were rising. So this was a pretty good day. We also worked on NodeXL, the network visualization tool embedded in Excel. It's the most widely used for education and creates, instead of drawing a bar chart, you get the network diagram to come out. So we just finished, what was published, the 2nd edition of the book about NodeXL, so that's a widely used resource. The last 10 years were about medical visualizations, showing patient data histories. This was with Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., about emergency admissions for pediatric care. And there's a standard formula of how to do it. You do A, B, C. Airways, you check the airways, you check the breathing, You check the, oh dear, what's circulation and disability, right? And then you get, that's supposed to be done in 2 minutes, and then in 7 minutes you do secondary survey, turn the baby over, check everything else. Is that right? Still right here. Okay. Anyway, of these 500 cases, only half of them got the right sequence of treatment. This was a total shock. That was not known to them before. And there were 29 ways in which the rules were violated. And they never understood it until you could see. So visualizations are very powerful in expanding your cognitive and perceptual powers. They amplify your ability. And that's what Alan was saying, my devotion to the idea of amplifying human abilities. That's what I'm after. I want tools that build people's capacity. So take a breath now. That's a little bit of background. This is the view in Vancouver on a nice summer day. And just take a breath and think of bigger thoughts, because we're going to go after a very large and complicated issue that has a 2,000-year history. And it's the battle between rationalism and empiricism. And rationalism usually defined as the belief in the logical perfectibility of human endeavors, and that you can have mathematical precision that once understood is permanent and eternal. Aristotle is usually the celebrated hero of rationalism and believed you could sit on your sofa and think about the world, and he did many brilliant things about vertebrates versus invertebrates, but he also got some things wrong. He knew men had 32 teeth, and he just assumed women had 28 teeth, but he never bothered to check. And so rationalism is very powerful, and we should respect it and value it, but it has its limits. Similarly, empiricism, which is usually the need to continuously refine our beliefs based on experiences. The heroes here are Leonardo, Galileo, Locke, and Hume, and they believed you had to get your hands dirty. You had to really work in the domain-specific areas, and once you had found a solution, you had to validate it in different contexts, and you had to continuously check it. Okay? And empiricism, some would say, takes longer, it's harder to do, it doesn't transfer, it doesn't generalize, but it has its values too. And so this is a continuing discussion. Both are valuable. That's the message to take away. Both are valuable. We don't want to reject either, but we want to be aware of the strengths, and as Alan was suggesting, we want to get the best of both. Okay? So in the 20th century, the sort of hero, I would say, early on was Ronald Fisher, statistical t-tests, and a hero of mine, certainly, and maybe John Tukey, another hero of exploratory data analysis, was his book in 1977, and he believed in graphical visualizations, and that was the way we would better understand the world around us. So those are two heroes that maybe make it more concrete for you, but to go very specifically, AI and HCI. Again, the boundaries of what is AI and the boundaries of what are HCI are very mushy. At times, in fortuitous moments, they overlap, and that's where we're going to look for it. But, the AI belief in models and predictive models and neural nets and that we can have a system which is going to do the right job and it will work forever. That's an extreme version of it, but that's kind of where it goes. And HCI is much more, let's do a study. Let's observe the real users and see what's happening. So this history has been going on a while. These magazine covers tell you that this is around for a while, but probably traces back to Alan Turing's 1950 paper called Can Machines Think? And the belief that machines would soon be thinking and they would exceed human abilities is a deep-seated, widely held belief that that continues. And it's represented by some of these books, maybe most well-known, Nick Bostrom's bestseller on superintelligence. And the question for him is, when will we have artificial general intelligence? Not if, but the inevitability of his. Now, he's maybe a little more rational than the Ray Kurzweils of the world who believe in singularities and other fantasies, but there are other kind of supporters who believe the robots are going to take our jobs, okay? And others who believe we will become the slaves of our robot overlords, if you will. And our final invention will be the robots and they will take over. But of course there is another side which says, maybe not. There's a lot of things wrong with AI. So Kathy O'Neill's book is my favorite, Weapons of Math Destruction, detailed, wonderfully written by a Harvard math PhD who worked in the financial industry and tells a great story. And, you know, her stories about how teachers get fired, mortgages get denied, parole is denied because of an algorithm that's not quite right. And it's a readable, terrific book that focuses on the harm done by serious algorithms which are opaque and scale, widely used. So she's got these three things: harmful, scalable, and opaque. Gary Marcus, who's here in Vancouver area, has this book out just recently with Ernie Davis. They were both at NYU. Gary's come west. Ernie still is at NYU. Wrote a wonderful book about rebooting AI. The first half I'm fully in agreement with. He tracks all the problems with AI and why it's not good enough. The second half, not so much. And I'm going to have lunch with him on Friday, so we'll see where that discussion goes. But he believes that what we need is more AI, and deeper AI, and better AI, and common sense AI, and AGI. And I'm saying, well, you mentioned user interface once in the book. I wish it was mentioned a little more, because that's where I think the combination will help, and they will be beneficial to each other. AI delusions, another one. Okay, just one more reading reference for you. 2 weeks ago, this exceptionally good report. There are now 300 reports around the world about governance of AI. The US government, the White House has issued several such reports, including one this week, which I read about maybe 40 or 50 of these, but it's a huge worldwide effort. The scope of it is enormous. This one's particularly good because it's a great taxonomy of 36 of the other ones, of the leading ones that give guidelines. The first 8 are their sort of central things, or the features they see commonly in these forms, but they strongly promote international human rights as a guiding value for shaping future technologies, especially AI. So I was quite charmed by this. It's a very readable, well, it's a challenging read because you have to keep in track the 36 documents. They have some nice visualizations, but these issues, human control of technology, professional responsibility, promotion of human values, these are themes that will return in my talk, so maybe that's why you'll think that why I'm sympathetic. Okay, so that's the AI story. On the HCI side, I would claim there's pride for the fact that 6 billion people have something like this in their pockets and they know how to use it to be in touch with family, to get medical assistance, to have education, to do business. And I would claim the success of HCI is because it, from the beginning, addressed diverse users, the rich and the poor, the old and the young, the men and the women, the able and the disabled. And that diversity led to products which were better for everyone. That's the real magic, that if you design for many people, it's not lowest common denominator, it's the highest. It gets you better, better, and better. And those 2.5 million apps on your, in the App Store were designed by principles mainly that came from HCI. Okay? Some of them have AI, an increasing number of them have embedded in, and important ones that we'll see in a moment. The community also addressed diverse problems, diverse users, diverse kinds of data, which was another virtue. And they had a deep-seated belief in the range of theories. So many, theories are wonderful, everybody should have their own, is the kind of thing that goes on. So there's lots of theories, lots of middle-level principles, and lots of specific guidelines that were driving the design of tools and industry. In particular, I focus on the Apple Design Guidelines, which have a section on user control, and it says people, not apps, are in control. Whew, that was right on the right spot for me. They were making a clear point. Furthermore, flexibility. Give users complete fine-grained control over their work. A clear devotion to the centrality and primacy of human endeavor and human use. Okay? So, that, to me, is at odds with what I see. Tell me if I'm wrong. AI design principles, which I want to change, are the focus on humanoid robots. This talk is not going to cover that. Okay? It's somehow an idea that got off the track, and except for Disney audio animatronics and crash test dummies, I don't see much of a future for humanoid robots. We can have that discussion after 2 beers later tonight. I am focused today in this talk about excessive automation and the dangers of excessive automation and what that looks like. And what it looks like to me is the Boeing 737 MAX, where an automated system was so automated, so autonomous, that Boeing didn't even tell the pilots it was there. Okay? Now, there's lots of versions of this history. Boeing's failures, its greediness, the FAA's failures, the design failures, the training failures, but I'll take it as an example to see other things. So Alan's already, go ahead.
It's a little much to blame that on AI. There's no AI in that system.
Okay, there we go. What is AI? All right. There's no, was there AI in
Badly designed controlled system.
Was there AI in Deep Blue to chess, play chess? No. Read the book by the author of it. He says there was no AI in playing chess. Okay, so AI world, they claim an imperial majesty over lots of things, but they will also say, we didn't do that. Okay, so there's some real challenges. I respect those challenges, and that's why this is, that's why this is a spirit discussion. But, okay, maybe it didn't use machine learning algorithms. But the question is, what is AI and what's not AI, and when does it get used? Okay, the other things we'll talk about simply. So what am I in favor of? I'm in favor of human-centered AI. My goal, I've said already, amplify, augment, enhance, and empower people. That's where I'm coming from. And what I'm after is not a machine which does what a human does, or does it even better, but a machine which gives a human a 1,000-fold amplification of their abilities. Now, traditionally, that's what ships and planes and bulldozers and trains did. They amplified our ability to do all kinds of things. And guns and rockets did that too in malicious ways. But the things we're talking about are more the electronic things, the web-based information services, online search of Google, email and text, photography. The digital camera is my favorite example of the wonderful integration of AI with HCI. I can take a picture. I'm going to take a picture of Alan because I want to know that he was here. And I see exactly what I'm going to get. The lighting is set automatically, and the jitter in my hand is carved out by all kinds of AI algorithms. And the focal point is chosen, and I can override some of it, and I can fix a lot of things in advance or after. I can add filters, color, cropping, etc. But it's a great integration because of this deep technology and lots of good AI, as well as good HCI. Okay? Navigation, Google Maps, another one. Business formation, eBay, Airbnb, all kinds of other applications that benefit. That's what I think changes the game dramatically. And I'm going to build on the phrase of reliable, safe, and trustworthy. That's where we're going. We don't just want AI or HCI, which both can be problematic, but we want reliable and safe and trustworthy systems. That's what we're in. And I'm going to try to define it so that more people are more creative more often. I have an unreasonable appreciation for the unbounded creativity of humans. And I think people are different from machines. People are not computers. Computers are not people. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but computers are not our collaborators, teammates, or partners. Okay? Come this at the end, but basically, I think people are special. And I want to build tools or devices or instruments or orthotics, or we need a good name, that help people be more creative more often. The goal is human self-efficacy and societal benefits. And I think we can get them both. So I think we can get all these things. That's what I'm after. I'm going to take a breath here. I invite you to take a breath, and maybe any challenges so far to this list or comments? Yes, David.
I'm surprised with navigation next. Google Maps gives its value system that you must follow the shortest time to get there. And if you try and change it and make a mistake, it changes it back.
I don't see that. When I do Google Maps, I get 3 routes.
Yeah, but if you're trying to minimize the...
And they show you the minimum time, right? Is that AI, by the way? Well, there's a lot of data. There's probably some goodness.
A-star.
A-star, okay. Anyway, but it does offer you choices. You can a priori set your distance, and you know where it is. Before you say go, you choose which of those 3. It'll show you 3. Okay? And then you have a choice. Are you walking? Are you biking? Are you going by car?
And if you change your mind and you go accidentally turn the wrong way, it immediately goes back to the shortest distance.
Not shortest distance.
The shortest time.
Thank you. Okay? Now, if you wanted something which gave you the most scenic route, that's hard to get. The things you can't get. But, you know, those are the design decisions. So those are when philosophy and ethics are at play, we can have lots of discussion. When you get to make it down into a design, you have to make tough choices. And you have to study what users want most of the time. And they allow you to do different kinds of things. And if you're driving your car, you can have multiple stops. But if you're taking public transportation, you can't. Okay, so there's a whole host of, and the fine structure of design is what we're going to have to get to. Thank you. Anything else?
So how would you define AI?
Oh, dear. Pass. Okay. I'll get to a piece of the puzzle, but thank you. All right. Now, the prevailing theories that all of us were living in were shaped in 1978 by a famous paper by Tom Sheridan, an MIT professor, and he talked about levels of automation. He had 10 levels of automation. And it went from human control all the way up to machine automation, full automation. And this one-dimensional scale became the widely believed notion. And that if you wanted more automation, you had to give up user control. That was the assumption. There was a zero-sum game, and there was a trade-off to be made. It was a one-dimensional model. And I bought it. And in the first version of my book, 1986, I have a chapter on that discussion called Balancing Automation and Human Control. And I said you had to get some point. You had to choose a point on that scale in those 10 steps. Okay. Now, I actually talked to Sheridan recently, who's nearing 90, and he said, you know, I never believed that that model would travel so widely and be so influential. And of course, many people have criticized it, extended it, amplified it, made variations, but the dominant belief was that you need to give up control in order to get automation. I became less and less happy with that, and I first changed the title in the 5th edition to say, ensuring human control while increasing automation. And even to me, that sounded like a puzzle. How do you get that? And I began to think about the items around my world of the thermostat. The thermostat, one might say, is automation that takes care of the temperature of the room. On the other hand, you could say, the thermostat is the way that I get better control of the temperature in my room. And I'm taking control by using a thermostat rather than having to stoke the fire and turn the temperature up. And one by one, as I looked at the objects around me, I realized that there was a way that the designers had figured out to give better control. Remote control, cruise control, all the things began to come into play. And so I then went so bold as to say there's actually 2 scales. There's the degree of human control and the degree of automation. And I said to myself, maybe we can get that and that at the same time. Wouldn't that be nice? The right kind of design, the fine structure of design, would give me the chance to have high control of the things I cared about, and yet high level of automation of things that I didn't care about. The camera, again. I get all kinds of feedback about what's going on. I have a high level of control of the image I'm going to make. I can override some of the things, but I'm getting the benefits of huge amounts of automation, and I can take pictures very rapidly and very easily, and I can control a lot of things that I get. So, as I began to instantiate this, the idea that it was a two-dimensional space, this sort of mind-expanding idea of going from the narrow limits of one dimension to two dimension, is really the simple message of this talk. If you remember one thing, it's over here, that there's two scales, and if you can break free, I found it hard, I think you'll find it hard too, from the idea that there's only one, and think that there's two, and I hope to show you some ways in which this plays out. So, in the side of reliable, safe, and trustworthy, the elevator, the camera, the elevator is pretty clear, it's well designed. A lot of AI and a lot of automation going on in a bank of elevators in any place, but when I push the 7th floor, the light goes on to say, I got the message, I'm going to the 7th floor, and then you see I'm going 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and the door is open. And it's become a simple model, but reliable, safe, and trustworthy. A lot of things went into making it safe and trustworthy. I'll come to them at the end. We're going to look at the reliableness of the system itself, the safe strategies of the culture of safety of the organization, and then the trustworthiness built in by the oversight. That we know there are standards in the elevator industry, and there's an inspector who comes around every year and checks it out. Okay? So there's going to be these layers that will get reliable, safe, and trustworthy. Now, we have to know sometimes we have needs for full computer control. Airbag deployment in 200 milliseconds, got to work right. Pacemaker, embedded. It's a closed system in that way, and we want that to work right. So there are times where we need that, but when we do that, we better think really carefully and give pretty high-level design and oversight to this as well. So you may know the story that in the US, at least, about 2,500 lives are saved each year from airbags. But in the early days, about 200 babies and elders were killed because of inappropriate airbag deployments. Okay? And the designers never thought that was a problem. They didn't anticipate that. And they just assumed it would. They didn't think of all the context of use, of the diversity of users. And they didn't think about the failure conditions of the airbag pattern detection tools. Okay? And so now the rules are, children's seats are in the back, not in the front. And now we have a detector in the passenger seat to know if there's a passenger in there. Okay? And you can make systems safer and more trustworthy and more reliable if you get the design right, if you think about that, and how to install other kinds of supervision and control. At the same time, we should remember there's some places that are purely human, full human autonomy, no computers. I don't want a computer with my bicycle. I just want to ride my bicycle. I want to play the piano. I want to make mistakes. I want to try to do something weird or different. Okay? Now, if I want, I can have a bicycle with training wheels to help me out. But basically, these are places I want to be master. I want to paint my brushes. I want to do things in my own creative way. Okay? Now, there's dangers. There's dangers here. There's excessive automation, which I've mentioned, and there's excessive human control. Those are both real problems. So, excessive automation, there's many examples. Google flu trends, the 737 MAX, the flash crashes in the stock market, one thing after another. There are ways in which too much automation, the Tesla crash of 2016. The National Transportation Safety Board's report on that says very clearly, well, this may have been over pushing what the technology should do. And the users didn't understand it, they were out of control, and just because you can do it in the technology doesn't mean you should do it in the product. They were pretty clear about it. They even criticized the name that Tesla gave, which is autopilot, a much stronger suggestion of its capacities than the realities. And so that's where we get to excessive automation and lots of other examples. Now, human control is also a problem, and so we want to have interlocks. The notion of interlocks are hundreds of years old. I think sort of to me the example that registered strongly in the early days of jet planes in the 1950s, jet planes landed more quickly, and to slow them down on the runway you have reverse thrusters. Okay? But sometimes in the early days, as the pilot's coming in and they're 20 feet above the ground, they hit a little air bump and they think they landed, they switch on the reverse thruster and pancake down the runway. Now the fix is simple. You put a strain gauge in the landing gear and you don't allow the reverse thrusters until the strain gauge reports that you're down on the ground. And every self-cleaning oven has an interlock. If the temperature is above 600 degrees Fahrenheit, you can't open the door. And there's various forms of interlocks proposed and existing in cars that prevent you from doing some of the silly things that drivers do. But we need more of those to prevent the kind of dangers. Okay? So that's the scope of what I'm looking at. And already this two-dimensional model, people who send me love letters about it say, I never thought about these different possibilities. And that's really helpful. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper and show you how the same product could be designed different ways. So the old-fashioned, down here, no low human control and low automation is a morphine drip bag. The patient's surviving cancer or has had surgery, and there's a bag of morphine, and it drips and drips. No automation. And it can give too much or too little, but that's what it does. Okay, so the idea of a dispenser which monitors body rates, the heart rates, and decides, oh, this patient's got a lot, better slow down, not so much. You could have a machine do it. But machines are not good at understanding human pain. And so patient-controlled analgesia, PCA, became an important idea. And the patient gets a kind of trigger. You grab the trigger, you get a shot of morphine, and you feel better. And some people experience pain in very different ways. And so it became an important idea. But there were problems because if you squeeze it too many times, you'll kill yourself with too much morphine. So the typical thing is you can only squeeze once in 10 minutes, and you can't get more than 8 boluses or 8 shots of morphine in 4 hours. Okay, and these will vary a lot, but that's another way of doing it. On the other hand, you could go to patient-guided, clinician-monitored. Now, you're thinking not about just the tool or the technology or just the patient, but you're thinking about the clinician, the hospital, and the hospital that has 100 of these devices in play. Imagine a centralized control center that now can monitor all 100 of these and see how they're doing. Is there any ones that have failed? Are they being used too much or too little? What's going on? Which ones worked out successfully? Which ones worked out poorly? And having a kind of overview of someone outside or a super system is generally a helpful mechanism. That's what air traffic control is about. Okay. So this example seems, maybe I'll just pause a moment about this. It's sort of a different idea. Any questions about PCA? Well, let's get on to the current issue of self-driving cars. Okay, and that's kind of where this issue comes to a head. So the 1980 car was usually about human mastery. Oh yes, there was some automation, maybe a growing amount, but pretty much we think of it as human control, you drive it. And the 2020 car is much more about computer control, or the self-driving version of that. But in the last few years, the implementers have begun to discover this is not quite going the way we want it to. Not just the crashes of Tesla or the pedestrian deaths or other problems, but there turn out to be many, many circumstances that is really hard to do for a machine. So when the policeman comes up to the car and does this, what does the self-driving car do? Okay? There are many road conditions or other difficulties. It's a complex issue, but I think that getting to the 2040 car, which will have reliable, safe, and trustworthy, is possible. I want self-driving cars. I don't want that name, actually, but I want cars that are safe, that are reliable, safe, and trustworthy, that will reduce the number of accidents, for sure, and we may have to improve the road beds themselves with more sensors and better information in the road themselves, and I think likely car-to-car communications will become a necessary part of an effective, reliable, and safe solution. So there's a deeper discussion, but I think the early notions and Google's too early producing a car without a steering wheel suggested that we were already there, but this is sort of back down. And the examples of what Toyota, Mercedes-Benz particularly are doing are more middle ground strategies. Lane following, collision avoidance, parking assist, okay, and various forms of cruise control. They want to avoid the notion of self-driving or autonomous cars. And that became an important liberating force for Toyota especially, to say and think about designs that gave the operator more control, improved their capacity to drive effectively. The idea of, letting go of the wheel and turning around and enjoying your friends or reading a book was not quite there yet in these kind of roads now. Elevators travel in an elevator shaft, they're well controlled, okay? Trains on a train track are a little more well controlled, but even there, we have difficult notions, and in that industry, positive train control, PTC, is, in Europe quite strong and growing in North America. But, a few times a year, some train engineer driving the train too quickly into the station comes up against the barrier and hits it a little too hard and makes a news story. Or 2 years ago in New York, north of New York City, Metro North train was going around, didn't realize he was doing 90 going around a sharp curve that was rated at 50, and train went off the track, killing 8. So we need these ways to prevent the excesses of human or machine control. Okay, that's the central argument here, and so I'm really coming to a close on this part, and the summary is I want high levels of human control and high levels of computer automation in order to get RST, reliable, safe, and trustworthy. The way it works, I believe, is by design principles of comprehensible, predictable, and controllable. There's much deeper discussions about these principles, but continuous display of status so the operator knows what's happening, and there may be many operators at many levels. The idea of air traffic control for self-driving cars would be another way that a control center would monitor tens of thousands of cars in a region and would have a better knowledge of what's happening and a chance to slow things down where appropriate, anticipate bad weather conditions or public events, and those are opportunities that will be explored if we break free from this narrow belief that what we need is a self-driving car. We need a car that's trusted, reliable, and safe. Okay? I would think. Now, this is played out a lot in military circumstances where disasters such as the Patriot missile system, which during the Iraq War fired missiles and shot down a British plane and an American plane, friendly aircraft. And those kind of disasters lead you to understanding about the excesses of automation. And the Air Force itself has shifted its language from unmanned autonomous vehicles to remotely piloted vehicles. Okay? And again we see as the fields mature, as the discipline grows, first an idea of surgical robots. You'll read headlines that say, surgical robot does better than physicians, than surgeons. And the robot did the surgery. Okay? Or the Large Hadron Collider discovered the Higgs boson. And the Hubble Space Telescope found a new galaxy. As if the machine, again, acting autonomously. But I assure you that the Large Hadron Collider and the galaxy, the Hubble telescope, the papers published in the journals only had humans as authors. Okay? Computers are not people. People are not computers. Okay? They are not our teammates, collaborators, or partners. And I'm saying that metaphor leads us astray. Let's see, how am I doing? Just little things of predictive search. These are good ideas. These are ways you can integrate AI with a good user interface. I type UBC and I get all these suggestions. I did go to the Apple Festival earlier in the year. It comes back there. Library. here is faculty at CS are designing for people, DFP. Once a month, every Thursday, Karen McLean runs the show, or helps run the show. There's a big team doing that, but if you want to know more about these things, Christina Canati is speaking March 11th, and there's lunch there too, 12:30 in Forest Street, 2300, right. So here is a little tool. I don't even know what SSC is, so somehow that was strange, but it doesn't, in this lightweight recommender, it doesn't bother me. For consequential financial decisions or medical ones and life-critical ones, I might have some troubles. The Mercedes-Benz Parking Assist does a very nice job of, you want to park, you see the spot, it gives you an overview, overhead display, pretty cleverly built, to show you where you are in relation to the vehicles, and then it guides you, it shows you the path it's going to take. You say, park assist active, accelerate and brake, observe surroundings. So it tells you what to do, it actually shows you, and then you get into the space really nicely, okay? And that's a success. Parking assist, not parking assistant, but parking assist. Again, the metaphors matter, especially for consumer goods. Okay, so not assistant, not partner or so. Jeff here at University of Washington wrote recently very nicely about this. 3 very nice examples in this paper. And he's talking about agency plus automation. He's saying human agency. The shift is towards human autonomy, human agency, human control. And he says the goal is to productively employ AI methods while ensuring that people remain in control. Thank you, Jeff. Unconstrained in pursuing complex goals and exercising domain expertise. I thought that was really nicely stated, but that's kind of an aspiration of where we're going. Okay, take a breath again. Maybe I'll pause. Any questions or challenges or anything come up? Yes?
When you talk about computer animation and control, do you think always centralized control?
No, I think both. Both the individual decentralized as well as maybe many layers, not just one central, but many. We'll come to that in a moment. But yes, I think you want to think about any technology, never autonomy. Even people are not autonomous. Okay? And autonomy is a misleading term. Thank you. Autonomy is not the right language. Even the Defense Science Board in the US came out and saying, autonomy does not provide a roadmap for us to see the future of technologies, okay? So we don't want to go there, but we need to think about the stakeholders at many levels. I'm coming to that in a moment. So, the last part here is a little bit of an exploration of the deep notion of responsibility. And I think clarifying responsibility accelerates quality. That's my message. Clarifying responsibility. Responsibility is the guiding force that will shape our building the technologies of the future. What do I mean by this? A lot of words. The legal terms, accountability or liability, and remember, only people are accountable or liable, machines are not. Okay? And humans are responsible. Fairness and transparency. The FAT-ML conference now in its 7th year, is it right? Fair, accountable, and transparent machine learning. Rather deep. Some complain too much academic papers needing to be made a little more real by better examples of real problems. And then the movement towards explainability and interpretability. There are many other words, but these are the popular ones. And I say these are what we want, that's what we want to accomplish. And so the first part is the reliable strategies for design of the technology itself. And I put them in a little A, B, C, D. First is audit trails, or a flight data recorder for every robot. Okay? Surprisingly, this has resistance from the research community, not the commercial community. On 5 occasions, I have asked journal editors and conference program chairs to add the idea of audit trails, product logs, or flight data recorders for automated systems. And they have consistently rejected that. One of them saying, hell no. Okay? On the other hand, when I talk to the Robotics Industry Association, they say, yes, we believe in that. We know. There are about 65 deaths from industrial robots in the U.S. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health, reports on them, but very few are understood as to what caused them, because there was no detailed record. And again, the NTSB, in its report on the Tesla crash of 2016, said, oh yes, there is a recorder, but it didn't provide the information we needed. And in part because it did not record the autopilot. There's something, I don't understand why there's resistance to recording the actions of automated systems. But that's kind of my number one candidate. I'm fighting that one pretty strongly. It seems like a clear, safe thing. I mean, civil aviation is a generally acknowledged success story of making safe commercial travel. And the flight data recorder and the voice cockpit recorder are both important aspects for retrospective forensic analysis. And I propose, it is another talk, it's not in here, but a national algorithm safety board, which would have a kind of capacity like the transportation board for medical and for industrial accidents and for all the kind of things that go wrong. Second, benchmark tests that are agreed within each industry for verification and validation. Here there is more activity and more willingness. Continuous improvement and process monitoring, that's I would say still more fuzzy. Data quality and bias testing, a lot of work on that. A lot of work on that fairness of data, especially under machine learning conditions and testing for bias. And this has become a pretty hot issue for which there's, I would say, a lot of positive activity. Explainable user interfaces, another hot topic, especially in the last 9 to 12 months. To my sight, a huge explosion of research and papers on this area. I think the younger generation of researchers get it, that this is a very interesting problem, and I could talk about that. Christina Camaldi and I had a discussion about this before, and I think there's various forms of it, and in the US, the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has a whole project with 11 teams working on this now in the third year, but they're mostly working on what I would call retrospective explanations, that something AI system does, and you say, I don't know, why did you do that? Why didn't I get my mortgage? And you get an explanation, which is not generally satisfying. And that repeats the history within HCI 30 years ago, when explanation systems were being built, and also in rule-based, knowledge-based systems. And those were abandoned in favor of prospective methods with a user interface. Again, that's a whole separate paper and a separate talk. But if I were talking to designers of systems, I would start with these. These are the things as a technology person to work on. Now, around that, we need a culture of safety. And the culture of safety is a well-established idea in the medical world, in hospitals and so on, not so much in the computing field. But to my pleasure, last week I met with Tom Dietrich, a famous ML researcher at Oregon State, and he's all about designing the organization so that it promotes safety. And this requires explicit commitment by the leadership for safety, open discussion of failures and near misses. That's a tough one. Open discussion. Okay? Hospitals, the good hospitals, have regular reporting about it. I mean, doctors and nurses are good people. They want to take care of their patients. If something goes wrong, they'll do their best, but they may not report it. And so we don't know about the near misses or the heroic things that had to be done. But we do in aviation. And the FAA in the US has an open website that anyone can report on things that went wrong. The FDA has an adverse drug reporting site that anybody, and the 6,000 reports a day come from public, from clinicians, from pharmacists. If you have an open system, you have a chance. Internal oversight boards for problems and future plans. Not just the designers themselves who made it, but somebody in the company who is looking at what's happening from a different point of view. Okay? And then public reports of failures and future plans. That's probably the hardest ask. Okay? But, you know, at some point in the airline field, well, of course they reported failure plane crashes and so on, but they began reporting baggage delays and lost bags. And that generated a kind of competition for having fewer lost bags. And you know, it works so that you get fewer lost bags. It used to be a common problem, it's now a rare problem. Okay? And so that issue of opening it up, also tough sell in the computing field. But that's it. So again, layer 1 was reliability of the technology itself. Layer 2 is the culture of safety of the organization. This has been instantiated in things like the capability maturity model from the Software Engineering Institute that ascertains that an organization has achieved a certain level of maturity in developing products. And they're using processes that are known to produce safety. The third layer is, for trustworthiness, is a social construct. Okay? And you may notice I switched the term from the title of this talk. It was trusted, but I got convinced that systems that are trusted are not always trustworthy. And I switched the language in the paper and in this talk to make sure I say trustworthy processes. Okay? Now this is a larger social structure outside the organization. Okay? And the key things, well, these are 5 possible ways to get the magic of independent oversight. And now, it's 12 years ago, I began to study independent oversight as part of a National Academy of Sciences project that I was part of. And I studied about 40 different systems of independent oversight from NASA and other government agencies, but companies and so on. And it became clear to me this was a very powerful mechanism, that you want independence for fresh thinking, but not so independent they don't know what's happening. They have to be close enough to know what's going on. And the Federal Reserve Board, for example, in the U.S. has an inspector at every bank and monitors what they're doing. The Food and Drug Administration has monitors at drug manufacturing and at meatpacking plants. Okay? Not perfect, but it catches a lot of the problems. Okay? And that notion of independent oversight is important. So if you read the Google online guidelines for AI, they talk about oversight, but they're saying that the developers of the software should maintain oversight over their system. Not enough. And Eric Schmidt of Google at a Stanford conference a few months ago said, you'd be really impressed at how hard Google works to make sure our products are safe. We don't need any independent outside oversight. We don't want it. Okay? Well, they certainly don't want government regulation. That's currently the bad guy. But I remind you that regulation from governments, when done right, can accelerate innovation. Okay? Most notably for car safety, seat belts, deformable bumpers, and so on, and for fuel efficiency. Both of those requirements were enormous stimulants to innovative work. But I don't hold much hope that that will happen, although individual agencies in the U.S. are moving down that road to do something about it. I still hope that insurance companies will require the right kind of standards, as they have been successful in the building business. That's my phone. Okay. So the building code is a quite large structure, but if you want to build a new building, you come before the zoning commission and you say, yes, we read the 30,000 pages of the building code and we've done the plumbing and the electricity and the structures. We adhere to the building code. We have 3 or 4 exemptions that we want because of the special needs of our building that don't match. And here's what we propose. The zoning commission decides to grant this or that in exchange for maybe some public amenities or whatever. And you go build your building. And when you're done, the building inspector comes by and checks to make sure you did what you said you were going to do. And then you get a certificate of occupancy. And then your insurance company says, we will warranty this building. Okay? And they will warranty, industrial practices and so on if they've had the right kind of things. Carl Landwehr, a colleague of mine, has written a wonderful paper called Building Codes for Building Code. It's a sweet title that for software we need a building code about how to do it right. And yet the computer industry and programmers have resisted certification and resisted any kind of, oops, did I do that? Maybe I did. Checking for a signal to come back. I may have just yanked it. So the building codes are potentially an opportunity, and AI standards, and yeah, we're finishing up. Accounting firms to audit, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, KPMG are all active. They're auditing. Voluntary industry plans, the Partnership on AI, or other opportunities. If you read the statements by the leaders of Google, Microsoft especially, they're really strong and positive about doing the right thing and taking responsibility. They just want to know what the rules are. They'd like some way that is. And the professional societies like IEEE and others, industry standards organizations are all. So that's the close. I'm done. But the summary is right here. It's the slide you saw before. The goal to amplify, augment, enhance, and empower with dramatic amplification. And my way of opening the possibilities is through this two-dimensional rather than one-dimensional thinking. And that's the story. Thank you for your time and attention. And I know some people have to go, but
Some people have to leave, that's okay.
That's okay.
We will be taking questions. So
right?
we'll take the questions.
And maybe I just should plug our 37th annual symposium is coming up May 28th. We'll have a workshop on this topic, and we will have some terrific speakers. But the group at Maryland is the Human Computer Action Lab. Come visit us online or in person. Your questions, challenges, objections.
So if there is more regulation and there are some agencies to validate these AI models or whatever, there will be more jobs. But won't it slow down the entire process of AI development? And
That's the common argument, that regulation inhibits innovation. But I already said, if you heard, that when done right, regulation accelerates innovation, okay? I would say even the pressure that explainable AI, which many people have objected to and say, we don't need to do that, you know, that's not really our goal, but has generated a huge growth of, I would say, creative work. So yes, there's a danger that regulation inhibits, but there's a potential that regulation accelerates innovation.
But since code of conduct of developing models or whatever, every country should follow, right? Some countries might not follow and might go ahead. How do you solve that problem?
They will suffer. Okay, I would say. You know, we have that discussion about countries, especially about lethal autonomous weapons systems. A big international discussion. Some 85 countries have been meeting for a few years in Geneva to try to work out a set of principles about what's going on. And several countries object to this idea. Okay, but that is moving forward, I would say, and I hope it will produce a positive resolution. Autonomous weapons like the Patriot missile system have shown to be flawed and dangerous. And I think there's some real dangers. I subscribe to that. I have signed that letter. If you look online at lethal autonomous weapons system, I believe that there's legitimate reasons for concern, and we should be worried about that. Landmine bans were another similar ones. It's an autonomous weapons system, maybe less electronic, but an autonomous system which has proven to be deadly to many civilians decades after they were installed. And there's a worldwide agreement on banning landmines. Again, imperfect, but pretty good. So I think we should not necessarily expect the perfection in these things, but if we can do pretty good, we should do it. Yeah, in the back. Well, you have, okay, go ahead.
Well, I have a follow-up on that one. Your previous slide, your 2D plot. So I still wonder, where would decentralized control fit in there? Can it fit, or is it an extra dimension?
I mean, I think you have to, there's many ways to think about decentralized. I would say that's part of this reliable, safe, and trustworthy. It will be dependent on the application domain as to how much you should centralize and how much you should decentralize. agree with that. Some people have suggested there's a third dimension.
Yeah.
And it could be another dimension here that's often come up is lightweight recommender systems where failures are not a problem. You know, it's even fun if you get a strange recommendation of a restaurant or a movie. Okay? Consequential ones of legal and finance and medical, and then life-critical ones like implantable defibrillators and other kind of devices which we are more worried about. So the layers of harm are another dimension. And then the speed of reaction is another dimension. So for weapons systems, more autonomy for defensive systems is a better case. But for offensive systems, you have a problem. I saw another hand here. Yeah. You are?
Mike Vanderloos.
Oh,
from the
okay.
Paris lab here in World Interaction. One issue that we struggle with is not so much R, S, or T, but it's culture. So culture may not interact as strongly with liability or but somewhat with safety, but trustworthiness. That different cultures look at very different aspects of automation systems to assess that trustworthiness factor. How does that fit in with what you presented today largely and then maybe specifically?
Whoa, long discussion, and I mean, it's a separate, I mean, I'm right, the next paper is about organizational design for reliable, safe, and trustworthy. And, you know, these are just a sketch of what should be done. I have written early on in 2016, there's a Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences paper where I talk about this idea of a National Algorithm Safety Board and the ways you might do it. These are not easy issues, they're very complex, but I'm saying it's time for a change of mindset from autonomous to a more human-controlled world where responsibility is tracked. Okay?
Just a follow-up, but like Google got in trouble in Europe for some of its privacy features, I'll call it, and it's where it's not an issue here. Correct. So it follows both the regulation component as well as your iPhone, somebody in China and whatever in Iraq might set up their systems completely differently and might have very different expectations.
Well, on the other hand, we could say the positive, the European GDPR from last May 26th launched a whole new format around the world, even places where it was not necessary to do. But the globalization of business means that, you know, pretty much that European GDPR ruling has had a profound impact, okay? Some would complain about it, right? And it's vague in terms of its requirements about explainability, but hey, you know, they're moving forward. And I say, every week there's a lot of progress. I mean, this past week the OECD launched a very large program about their AI guidelines. I would say the best place, I'll go back to that Berkman, if you're going to read, well, there's a lot of papers to read, but where am I? I'll go back. Go all the way to that. I really found it wonderful, the Berkman Emeritus. See if you can get that one. Just, it'll give you a wonderful overview that, you know, I struggled for many years to make sense of. And I read theirs and I said, wow, that makes sense. That puts it together, all the different kind of things that were proposed. In the back, yes. You are?
Shahram Tafazoli from Motion Metrics. We use AI for image processing in mining applications. So I was excited to hear your talk because at first I was so excited with AI and deep learning, but as we saw shortcomings, we started bringing humans in the loop to deliver what we are doing. I want to go back to that quadrant, the 4-quadrant chart you have.
Yeah. The 4, yeah, okay.
The one that shows automation versus the, I have a basic question there.
That's good.
Yeah, like, you know, you have the one with the car, which says 2020, 2040. That's the example I was thinking.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
It's a little later. Yeah. And then 2040. If I didn't attend your talk, right, and I was looking at this, my simple imagination would be that I will have the 1980 car exactly there, with low automation and lots of human control. As it goes to 2020, 2040, this would have been my thinking, that AI is going to improve. I will need less human control. And so essentially, 2020 will sit somewhere in the middle of that chart, and 2040, instead of being up there with all the reliable, safe, and trustworthy, it will be more of AI and less of human control, because AI has improved a lot, because humans have been helping with the control and AI learning. So my point is, I'm challenging this a little bit, saying maybe 2020 car is not really there. It's not, we don't really have so much intelligence in it that we think.
You think it's more here?
Maybe there, and
Yeah.
2040 should be coming out. I'm just,
Well, I mean,
challenging this.
it's a very reasonable challenge. Thank you. I think, we are all, this is meant as a kind of very simplified model of what's going on, and I haven't fully defined all the features that you want to have. But as I look at this, again, the Society of Automotive Engineers in 2014 put out 6 levels, you may know, also from human control to machine autonomy. They called it autonomy. And I think that was a mistake. Again, it proposes this one dimension. Now, when you turn on even the turn signal in your car, 7 lights go on, all kinds of things happen, and when you turn the wheel back, it clicks off. It's a little bit of automation, but it gives you the right control. It simplifies your life, it increases your performance, because you get lights going on everywhere, you get a display, you know the status, and you hear a click. That click was built in to let you know it's gone off. So there's all these little ways, and it requires a redefinition of what we mean by human control. I don't control my iPhone, but when I send a text message to my wife and it says delivered, I feel like I did it. When I take a picture with a camera, I feel in control of the things I care about. Okay? And I think that's it. So the fine-grained structure of understanding the human control is, and because of your excellent question, you will get this bumper sticker, which says, humans in the group, computers in the loop.
I love it.
And that's what I have on my, you may have noticed it here, but the message there is that humans are social, they're embedded. Even when you're working on your own, you're thinking, what is your boss going to think of this? What are your colleagues going to think? How does this work with your subordinates? You're embedded in a group, okay? And the computer should be in the loop.
Are they coming in?
Yes, this one's for you. And there's a few more for those who want at the end of the session. But that's the basic, the notion I'm trying to promote, that people are socially embedded. We want to facilitate that connection socially, and we want computers there too. I always found the idea of putting the human in the loop was kind of, oh my, do we have to put the human in the loop? It's kind of, oh, if we have to, we'll do it. But I think people are in control and should be central. So humans are social, and we want computers to help us be better, to perform better, to have our sense of self-efficacy. Always the technology has been that way, I think, and that's the
I agree with that.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time and attention.